all the reason to say no, they're not as good as one reason to say yes. In our company, we celebrate that. We try to get people to sign up. So we work remotely, but when we attend races together, you build a culture of trust. Like, hey, I just trust you that you're committed to the full-time job, and just with that as our core value. Sometimes we get disappointed, right? But those cases not are really negligible. We get the best out of the people who are just trusted and they're just really reliable. Building a connection with them, so I maintain monthly one-on-ones with all employees.
Wow, all like 80 or 100 employees?
Right. Now, in the past year, I stopped doing that, focusing on just building a better structure because now that the team is a lot more stable.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the CTO Show by Tech Vibe. Today I'm your host, Philip and we have a special guest today who is Harley, who is the CEO and co-founder of CoderPush.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Harley, we've heard a lot about you, and I think the most impressive thing that when we first look at your CV is that you have such an international background. So maybe, do you mind starting by introducing a little bit more about yourself to the audience and telling us what you've been up to?
Yeah, sure. It sounds funny to have the international label, right? I'm a local. I was born in central Vietnam, and then I went to Hanoi, to Singapore, and to the US and China, and finally settled down in Ho Chi Minh City.
Wow. And what brought you to kind of each of those places?
Yeah, so it will be first an academic path where you just study and you get into better programs and go to the top school, then to the top tech companies. I was then when I returned to Vietnam is when I feel like life is great here, but I miss that connection to being surrounded by the best people. And Ho Chi Minh City, I feel like I can have the best of both worlds.
That's great. That's great to hear. I think if we zoom in on your background, I think for those of you who don't know about Harley, he has such a really impressive background. He was, at Yale for a university, and then you got to work for some of these leading technology companies like Microsoft in the US as well. And, you've done a few startups in the US as well. And I think a lot of people may ask, the startup ecosystem in the US is just so vibrant, right? And there's so many opportunities there. Why leave something like that and go to a place like Singapore or even in Vietnam?
So I think things go in cycle. I was lucky to be part of just the building tech ecosystem. I built the first web application in 2005 and of having the first funded startup in late 2009. So returning to Vietnam in 2015 was basically when we actually have cooler things to do here. You see more tech startups. So I was initially following where just the excellent community, excellent talent are coming, and also something new. But since I've been in Vietnam for almost 10 years now here, I started with a coding bootcamp where I got to train engineers, and then now running a software consultancy. We actually enjoy enabling tech entrepreneurs overseas to succeed with Vietnamese talent. So I just find that sweet spot where we can keep learning and growing, but then we get exposed to the really competitive tech landscape internationally.
Oh, that's great. And so I'm guessing when you first came back in 2015, the tech ecosystem and landscape must have been quite different, right? So I guess, do you mind taking us back to kind of when you first started and when you were working at this company? Like, what was that like, and what was that experience like for you?
2015 was in Ho Chi Minh City. It was really vibrant, but as anything that the community gets excited, it's still the Web 2.0 excitement, and you get a lot of community events. You meet a lot of energetic people, but at the same time, it feels there's that signal to noise ratio is still low, where you still need more people with experience. There's more capital, right, to fund ambitious startups here. So I was at that point, I've just felt that I enjoy my role as a trainer in engineering. Later on, I was head of engineering of Tiny Pulse, a company, a tech team size of about 50 people.
Wow.
With an office in Ho Chi Minh City, and another 50-person team in Seattle. So I do feel like the talent is sort of underrated in a sense here, and that's why I continue to be here. But in terms of opportunities, I'm looking to bridge the gap where there's more capital, there's bigger market in the West, especially the US. So the best of both worlds is for people like me who lived overseas, like coming back, right? You gain regain the experience coming back, embracing this culture and building a growing team. But for a lot of Vietnamese talent, maybe they should go overseas for a while, and then it's important to try different culture for the perspectives.
Got it. Okay. And before you kind of manage these, organizations, like 50 people is a pretty big team, right? Did you have a lot of like leadership experience and, in terms of building that team and managing that team, moving from an IC role where you're building software yourself to actually, leading this organization? Like, was that a big challenge for you as well, or?
Yes, definitely. In my own startups, it grew to about 15 people in my role as a CTO.
Right.
But when I joined someone else's startup, right, as head of engineering, I got to learn from other executives, the leaders who were like 10 years older than me, right, attending really stressful board meetings, and just feel that, you feel there's someone else, right, chasing you, that for results, right? Someone asking you really difficult questions. Why is the tech, getting slower, right? Who is doing the work and who are the best people? What can we do to, just create a new product in much shorter time than before? So I had that experience at the same time, starting a new family, having kids. That's where you figure out like priorities and also understanding your staff. In my case, like staff and their own families. So how to bring people to work, in my case, as a tech team, as different software teams. In software teams, you try to keep the team size manageable.
Right.
And there's no perfect formula, but what I enjoy most as of now is just building software teams.
Got it. And I guess like when you first decided to start like CoderPush and move away from working at a startup or working for one specific organization, was there an initial kind of impetus that really motivated you to make that leap of faith?
Yeah, talking about leap of faith, I like working on a specific product and solving tech problems.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know what that idea would be. There's a concept that is now popular, but it wasn't popular back then. It's fractional CTO.
Right.
And so I would start there. I started just advising or doing my part in a part-time basis. And then the next thing you needed was, hiring more developers.
Right.
And then make sure they actually work well with you. Then they work well with others and onboarding new ones. And then suddenly you have to kind of downsize, right? So in my case, I work with one client to many. That then I can have the flexibility of moving my engineering talent from one team to another.
Wow.
So CoderPush is where I can fulfill that dream, where I can have the flexibility of engineering talent, and then I get to work with really smart clients. Right? They sit in Silicon Valley, they are in Europe and Singapore, and then I bridge the gap where there's expectation on how to work well as a distributed team. So from day one, we embrace the remote first mindset and work style.
Wow.
It has served us really well so far. So we could continue to grow our teams at 80 plus people across Vietnam right now. So it feels like, hey, how can we keep this going for a long time?
Yeah.
Flat teams, people are productive, and then you kind of make sure that the culture is set right so they can stay for a long time.
So I guess it sounded like you started kind of even organically, right? Where companies would reach out to you and ask you to be a fractional CTO, and kind of the demand just grew, right? Interesting. And I'm actually very curious about this like remote team part, because even in a company, it's just once you get to a certain size and scale, it's just very hard to actually keep track of what's going on. And then the other thing that, it's very hard to build in many remote teams that people say is culture, right? This sense of cohesiveness and that, we're working towards similar values and similar goals and missions. Like, how have you kind of achieved that, kind of thing, even when you're working in such a diffuse environment?
Yeah, I can say remote teams comes with a lot of pros and cons.
Right.
What I did was just adapt it as I went, and I think thoughtfully adapt it, because you have to learn what's working. You have to learn how people are feeling about remote work in general, and then people's lives, right, as they get married, as they want to move further away from the city center, as you need to find more talent that are not limited to being close to the office from other cities.
Yeah.
So it's also a demand, right, as much as a supply
Right.
opportunity.
Got
So
it.
for me, number one was we're just growing gradually, that we got the chance to take our time with hiring. You don't invite people for back-to-back interviews in your office, right? So hiring can just be spaced out. You have thoughtful conversations with candidates, so you hire the right one. And then second, you build a culture of trust. Like, hey, I just trust you that you're committed to the full-time job. And just with that as our core value, sometimes we get disappointed, right? But those cases just are really negligible. We get the best out of the people who are just trusted, and they're just really reliable.
Wow,
Right.
okay.
Third was that building a connection with them. So I maintain monthly one-on-ones with all employees.
Wow.
In-
All like 80 or 100
Right.
employees.
So
wow.
so now in the past year, I stopped doing that, focusing on just building a better structure, because now that the team is a lot more stable, and we have a lot of people who have been with us, right, for 3 years and 2 years. But initially, I still remember that, my calendar is filled with monthly one-on-ones with
Wow.
80 people. So at least 40 hours a month, right? More than 10 hours a week, that I just get to check in. And then you can ask about how's the work with client, right? What's interesting to explore?
Sure.
How's family?
Sure.
And how is your health? Because technically, if you sit at home, right, you don't go out that much, your immune system is not very good. And if you don't move around, right, your fitness may not be very good.
Got it.
And the mental clarity is not good. And we actually went through the COVID time when
Yeah.
we found ways to support people. We try to get food and ship
Oh,
and
that's so
deliver
nice.
to people when
Okay.
most people couldn't get delivery going.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And so I guess, based on your hiring now, like, is there certain things that you look for now that are different than maybe if you were like running a in-person company?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right now, I actually prioritize people with experience, that they have made the best out of in-office environment, that they just looking for something that they can pace themselves. So software is a pretty stressful career where
Yeah.
you have to constantly upgrade your skill, but the pace of work is dictated by how competitive, right, things are. So you can work on something, you have to go to market, right? Your product cannot be too perfect to launch. You have to launch early, and you have to raise money, and then you have to burn that money. So we have great clients who make sure that they can have the right budget. They work with us to not give us surprises. We take care of people as much as possible.
Got it, got it.
In some cases, we take equity, and we're very proud of that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then as we hire new people, I think it's time we can afford, right, the really experienced ones,
Right,
and
right.
make use of their strengths, rather than I pay you a lot and I expect you to work harder than everyone else.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
In the early days, you hire for a good mindset. You can be really responsive, really proactive, really good English. But as we grow now, we can have that diversity. And one is more experience. Two is, I think, just more women, right? So that we can also have just more women voice in the company.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I guess like if you had to go back and go back to your old companies, do you think you would have built also like a remote organization, or is this kind of a unique element of Coder Push and the culture that you guys have built here?
Yeah, I stumbled upon this remote culture first. I wanted a co-founder that really complemented me,
Ah,
and he sits in Hanoi,
okay.
right? And we had some history through the past. I guess he was my student in my coding bootcamp class when I went to Hanoi to teach. He was the best student from the class.
Wow.
He's even older than me. And then we stay in touch. He went on and did startup, right? And hiring more software students from my other coding boot camps.
Right,
So,
right.
so basically, we always stay in touch, and it's just when we had the chance to build teams together.
Right.
I always believe in having a co-founder, so that one, I can focus on what I do well, and I get the support, and two, I think just so you have time, right, to have to care about other
course,
things in life. We also aligned on giving time to family and fitness.
Okay, awesome. I guess to give a sense of like what you guys actually do, obviously it's high level, it's just like software outsourcing, but are there any kind of really interesting projects or examples of what you guys have done for clients in the past that maybe you can give the audience illustrative examples of?
Yeah, so I'm quite proud of the clients we have. At the same time, right, can't take the credits, right, for the idea.
Yeah.
I think I'm so typically we have built like a lot of Web 2 and Web 3 apps. So Web 2 will be like marketplace, learning platforms, event ticketing system, building solutions. So I'm proud, in particular, I think Cohort. I think it's an awesome name as well. It's a marketplace for artists, but there are many roles of like actual like famous artists and collectors, and these are for like visual arts, things you see in a gallery,
paintings,
right? High value goods.
Okay.
And now you can buy it online. It's a little bit more democratized, right, to own artwork.
Got it.
And artists now can also build their own portfolio and following. So they also can do the Web 2 way, which is this marketplace, and also the Web 3 way, which included NFTs. So very proud of them because it's the team that's really distributed Silicon Valley founder and Asian founder.
Yeah.
And I get to play the fractional CTO role, interim CTO, to then hire the next CTO to help them grow.
That's great.
On the Web3 side, we would have people build one particular system is like everyone can build your own lemonade stand. People can just start, it's called Lemonade, and it's people can just start events and sell things, and now it's in tokens, and they backed by amazing blockchain founders, including Vitalik, creator of Ethereum.
Wow.
So
that's
when I saw
amazing.
my team members showing me feedback, UI UX feedback from Vitalik, and I had goosebumps.
Wow.
If I'm an engineer, then
That's
I get
insane.
a feedback from that guy, right? Like
Right.
that he's the goat of the crypto community.
Yeah.
Extremely smart, and
Yeah.
but just that feel like you're just 1 or 2 degrees from super smart people.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
there's a financial system that's coming out that I can't say the name yet, but we get the chance to take more equity than we take cash. And
Wow,
it's just
okay.
like from a billionaire founder who's
Right.
willing to give us equity
Equity
that
in the
says a lot
business.
on the trust that we're really honored by that. And
Yeah.
so in it's interesting then we can feel like let's prioritize the talent right here, and when we hire new people, let's keep in mind how we can prepare them for this client when they need more.
So like when you say that, it's actually very interesting to me because, when I think about normal soft outsourcing firms, it's almost like a service business where, they come to you, the client comes to you, and you have a very specific scope, and then, you wash your hands and you're done, right?
Yeah.
But it seems like from that last engagement that you're talking about, you're almost like this hybrid, like venture capital / incubator firm / venture studio where you're helping them grow from 0 to 1, but also you're also taking equity and you're becoming this partner. So it's a very interesting and innovative approach, right? And it's very interesting that you're talking about being able to do that and being quite flexible as well. So that's super cool, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, we chance upon it. Everyone wants bigger clients and more stable clients. So taking early stage startup, right, as clients comes with risk.
Yeah.
But the rewards are that you get that 0 to 1 journey.
Right.
And you get really smart clients who are embracing this pretty challenging path to raising money, building the tech team, don't have any, sometimes some of them don't have internal technical talent. and then sometimes they bring in really amazing co-founders early on. So, but not all projects have to be like that.
Sure.
I have to make sure there's a balance, right? There are projects that are one-off, right?
Okay.
We do a good job and we just try to do the best we can with the budget and
Sure.
the timeline. There are projects that are maintenance, right? Then I can just get a retainer on the number
Existing
of hours,
workflow.
so we can just make
Okay.
sure that their business is stable.
Makes sense,
But
makes
that
sense.
allow us, right, to have certain group of engineers who fit with certain groups of clients,
I
right?
see.
Going for product market fit, rewriting the system because they now need scale.
Right.
Yeah, so it's the learning is not just on people building the startup. We're
Right.
providing service, but if we have that product mindset, we learn just as much, right? In cases of really demanding CTO, we benefit the most, right? It's like, hey, just criticize, we learn a lot.
Wow, okay.
And I have to say, I used to be anti outsourcing.
Really?
Right?
Okay,
Working
okay.
in a tech startup and hiring people,
Yeah.
interviewing people who just work on outsourcing. I'm like, what a waste. But now I
Right.
appreciate both worlds.
Right,
Because the
right.
stability of I think when you work in the service, right, you have to document better, you have to deliver better, and you respect the constraints.
So I guess if you had to kind of talk to the CTOs who are in our audience, like when would you say is a good kind of opportunity to outsource some of the work in the projects, and when is the opportunity to keep it in house and hire your own engineers? Like how do you make that distinction?
Yeah. I would say it's always better, right, to have a co-located team,
Yeah.
right? You and I come here and we can talk tech. Just stronger connection, right? We can whiteboard it out. But then, do you have the right people, right, to build the co-located teams, right? Sometimes it takes you too long to find the right people.
Of course.
And you cannot
Yeah.
afford some people you want to work with, or they just don't have 100% focus.
Right.
Then what do you do, right? So first, you kind of have to accept that you can work remotely with the right people.
Right.
And then, how do you make sure there's a effective collaboration?
Yeah.
And if you start scaling, right, the number of people to work in your team, you kind of wish that, I wish someone take care of that for me, right? So for us, it's like, hey, we have one engineer working with you, right? Super responsive, proactive, knows how to deliver,
Yeah.
right? Then you're like, well, I need another, and then the onboarding becomes much easier. We take
Right.
care of that.
Right.
And then when the team is with you long enough, they start demanding career path, right? Salary review.
Yeah,
And so these things,
yeah.
while we know the pain points of when you build your own teams, you should think about. But we know you also have to care about the product,
yeah.
and I can't survive, right? I need to go and
course.
talk to my customer, talk to my investor. So the best of both worlds is you are aware enough to that these things important, right? The culture, whether it's in person or remote, right? The engineering mindset, the product mindset, accepting that it's also with flaws. There's no such perfect system. There's always more technical debt to deal with. But when you know that, you're aware of that, how much you're willing to sort of accept. If you just let someone else, listen to what you say that need to be built, you pay for the service, but you demand the best service you can.
Makes sense. Yeah. So I guess there's no clear-cut answer, but it's
Yeah.
more
It's just
around
more options.
trade-offs, right?
Yeah. If you and I, start, I'm a technical guy, and
Yeah.
I'm like, let me do as much as I can in-house before
Right.
we get it out there.
Right.
But then, what if I don't have enough time?
Yeah.
Right. What if?
Yeah.
And that's when it gives us more option, right? Before the idea of all these asynchronous tools and meetings. Now there's just so many amazing collaborative tools that it's actually more effective.
Yeah,
Right. To do
for
it
sure.
virtually.
For sure,
Then you have
for
more
sure.
options.
For sure. Yeah. And I think especially after COVID and even now, like Silicon Valley's like salaries are just so high for startups and even for these like big tech companies that I think there's a lot of, even with like AI copilots, you can automate or you can outsource a lot of the work to, organizations like yours and,
Yeah.
still achieve the scale, but at a fraction of the cost. So I think that's definitely a trend that we'll see in the future as well.
Yeah.
I want to shift back a little bit more towards your own management style because, in my previous life, I used to be like a PM, right? A product manager. And I think even, managing one workflow or one feature, right, or one button on a app or a project is pretty complicated, right? And there's so many stakeholders involved. And now, you're in this organization, and not only are you working with one company, you're working with multiple companies.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's so many different work streams, and some projects start, some projects end. Like, how do you manage everything, and how do you have time and capability to actually keep everything organized and deliver for clients?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the hard part that you mentioned is still true today.
Yeah.
Right? Simple is hard, right? And one thing we can do is we know our clients, right? Sometimes they are the PMs themselves. We understand the complexity of the work.
Yeah.
Right? They have to try out more ideas and do it faster. They demand. We tell them that engineering is not a black box. We have to communicate, so it helps them make better decision. But we have to respect that PM is a very difficult, task, and using the tool, tracking it, and then expecting everyone to fill out all the information you need. Sometimes we have PMs, right, working with clients as well, but a lot of times, right, I think the best, right, products are actually, having PM in-house.
Got it.
Right, product management, right?
Yeah.
But then but for us, when we kind of become more aware of what can go wrong with product management, with project management, right,
Yeah.
and different roles in a product team, we watch out for them. So
Yeah.
sometimes we can point out to clients that, hey, maybe we can have a sprint, right? A 2 week or 1 week time frame that you have for cleaning things up to make sure everything is ready.
Right,
Maybe, hey, you didn't consider all the testing and the security practices. We have them over here. Like it doesn't have to take that long. We can get 80% of what's needed. So it's more like what can we bring to the table for those who already care about high quality and they know that it's really difficult. So hopefully it's the expertise, it's the experience.
Yeah.
Hey, even if we do it ourselves in that limited timeline and limited budget,
Yeah.
we probably can't do a good job.
Yeah, I see.
But what
I
we
see.
can bring to the table is more awareness, and then some tools that we just keep using and we become better. So we're
I
very
see.
efficient in integrating the tools into it.
Interesting.
Continuous integration and deployment. So best practices do carry across projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like your team has experience basically launching products from 0 to 1 over and over and over again, right?
Right.
So maybe you guys can do it more efficiently and more effectively than someone who's just going through this journey one time or 2 time or something.
Yeah, there are different personalities in software people.
Yeah.
So I have to make sure there's a group of people in the company who are really interested in that.
Right.
Going through that journey again and again.
Right.
But there are some other ones who like the stable product environment. They like to think more deeply about the product.
Definitely.
So it's okay to just let them focus on what they know best. Some dive really deep into UI, UX. They don't care about the rest. And some, little bit on their just testing, regression, testing all the features, finding little holes and document that. But that's it. So that's also a cultural thing. What I love about being Vietnam is they're just people for all the roles you can imagine. They have the mindset to just do it well. But sometimes they only want to do that well.
Yeah.
And how do you bring a group of people who then, to do collectively the whole thing well?
I see.
It requires, right? Maybe some kind of leadership that understand, our strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. It sounds like you really have developed not only as a technical leader, like organizing everything, but also as a people leader, right? And a lot of that is managing personalities and making sure everyone's happy, even with very limited constraints, right? Interesting. I want to move on to the client side. So the interesting thing that you said is that a lot of your clients actually are not just Vietnamese companies, right? They're pretty global, including Silicon Valley startups, including companies in Web3 who are globally remote as well. I'm guessing you have a lot of connections from your time in the US and in Singapore, but where do your clients usually come from, and how has that kind of been as you have scaled the company as well?
Yeah, so it started with my network and then word of mouth and then my co-founder's network as well.
Got it.
And it's primarily the US
Really?
and then
Okay.
Europe.
Okay.
So no clients in Vietnam.
Okay.
One is that we have the competitive advantage of leveraging Vietnamese talent. We can hire them from different cities in Vietnam. So we can take our time to find the right fit in this amount of experience and then even the fit with company culture. Then we make sure that they have the ingredients we want to work with clients. So
Yeah.
responsive, right, proactive, and just deliver great work. So our clients, interestingly, we have to then also accept certain challenges. One is that clients in New York, right, Boston, they're on the East Coast of the U.S. They're
the
12
time
hours
zones, right,
away
yeah.
from us.
Yeah.
That's not too bad. We can
Right.
do a meeting, 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. our time.
Right.
We actually have more clients on the West, and that's more like Silicon Valley and
I
up
see.
north where Seattle is. So California and such. So that's where the time hours are even trickier. 15 hours different or 14 hours difference. But basically, what we try to do then, to make the time overlap and an advantage rather than when possible, which is the continuity, right? Like the developers finish the work over there, there's handoff, and then work with us over here.
Wow.
There's overlapping hours, of course, for a meeting, like
Right.
daily sync, right?
Sure.
And weekly demo.
Sure.
And for most of the time, the secret sauce is really no surprises in meetings. Things are already communicated or documented.
Yeah.
And when we have in the meeting, sometimes we watch a live demo of the feature
Yeah.
that we already sent over as
Wow.
a recorded demo,
Nice.
right? So that this is not the first time, this is not a surprise of why we have this as a blocker. But yeah, so the US is most interesting in terms of overcoming that challenges.
Right.
Our clients in Europe, we actually enjoy the nice time overlap because our
Okay.
developers get the flexibility of like being quite chill in the morning. They can do
Wow.
work in the morning, the family work, go to the gym, right?
Hmm.
But in the afternoon is when the Europe, they wake up, and you
Oh, I
actually can
see.
go for dinner and then get back and then wrap up the work with our clients.
Right. So it's like finding different overlaps to make it work specifically to that client, right? And
Yeah.
making the best out of the schedule.
Yeah, the time
Interesting.
zone challenge is something we just discussed heads on early on. And then like given these challenges,
Right.
it's like a long distance relationship.
Right,
If you
right.
if you know like, well, we're gonna have these problems, right?
Right.
What can we do? And when you face it head on, actually there are a lot of better tools, better ways to do it, so that
Right,
it
right.
doesn't depend so much on just like being in long meetings together.
That makes sense. And maybe it's more efficient that way as well, hopefully.
Sometimes, sometimes it's frustrating, right? Like you
Right.
start a project, it's like, I could have asked all these questions in one go.
Yeah.
Why do I have to wait until tomorrow?
Yeah.
But we understand that, I think we're not the only one facing those. So again, if we are becoming aware of the problem, right, then we're more likely to solve rather than just only getting frustrated.
That's
there
great.
are cases, of course, if we can hand over the work and clients say, now I can hire more people, right? Now that I have more funding, I can hire people locally.
Yeah.
We're happy, right? We celebrate anytime we can
Wow.
actually wrap up a project. Because
Wow.
then again, our people, right, get new projects. That's okay too.
That's great. I want to zoom out a little bit, and I'm just curious about your take about kind of Vietnam's role as almost this engineering hub, and especially in Southeast Asia, but as an emerging market globally, right? Because I'm guessing when you first came in 2015 versus where you are now, and obviously your journey through both startups, through bigger companies, and now starting in your own company, I kind of want to ask your opinion about projecting the future. Like, where will Vietnam's role be? Will there be more and more software outsourcing to Vietnam? Will Vietnam develop as a tech hub where a lot of engineers or a lot of companies will be based here? Yeah, what do you think the future looks like?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting what
Yeah.
is going to come. First, it's tech in general. It's no longer just software. It's hardware, it's a chip, it's AI is not just software.
Yeah.
And then the level of English in Vietnam has gone up a lot. So now we all feel a lot more natural to work in an international environment.
Yeah.
Virtually at first, but there are also those who go overseas to continue studying or working in bigger companies, internet MNCs overseas, and many Vietnamese who return. As big companies have taken notice, right, and they set up regional offices, either in Singapore or then another development center or other types of offices in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I'm just a piece of the puzzle where
Yeah.
I make it flexible to have
Yeah.
teams here without a full-fledged office.
Right.
We have mini offices for people to hang out. We can do some kind of office environment for bigger clients,
Yeah.
but we bring that options, right? But the big guys, right? They should come here and just search for like why Vietnam, right? Let's
Yeah.
look out for, why a lot of companies are now sort of bringing their IPs here, right? Sending their people here, develop. And what for me personally, the ability to build a sizable team is such a good opportunity to grow, right?
Yeah, yeah.
As an entrepreneur.
Right.
In the US, if I continue to stay there and I want to have my own company, I'm thinking just 10 people, 20 people, and I feel this is like already very stressful.
Right.
But here, like 100 people, 200 people, someone else can teach me how to do it even more. And if
Interesting.
you are a good manager, leader, you then bring in good management team.
Right. Right.
You realize that operation
Right.
in Vietnam is not as hard, right, as in other, because people are hardworking, right?
Yeah.
You can see from restaurants to factories, like in tech companies, people are just really excited to work. And if we can just get them to have better exposure, learning from really smart people from overseas,
yeah.
right? We have the work ethic, we have the learning, attitude, right? We are using English every day now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we just need to see more of the world, and the world is now noticing. And in particular, you can choose Latin America, Eastern Europe, India, maybe China, but Vietnam also appeals as a culture and probably one of the best food, right, cuisine in the world. So now I talk to clients that actually a lot of them want to work with us because they're like, I'm already planning to go to Vietnam. Even though if I only want to meet your team like once a year,
Wow,
right?
wow.
And of course, I also want my team members to have days that they can just meet our clients overseas.
Yeah.
That, right, ability to bridge the gap by actually overcoming the distance, have them come here or, go out, right? I think that's why we see more why Vietnam phenomenon. I hope to contribute to that as
That's
well.
amazing. That's
Like,
amazing.
sharing stories of successful friends in Vietnam and of course mentors in Vietnam. People 10 years, 20, 30 years older than us are still running really successful companies.
Right. It's amazing to me because, your own journey started in Vietnam. You were born here, you're from here, you were raised here. And, you were fortunate to get all of these opportunities, but then you came back and built this company. And now you're almost contributing to the growth of the ecosystem, right? You have a very big team of engineers, you're helping them mentor them. For those in the audience who are, maybe they're Vietnamese engineers themselves or they're younger in their journey, I'm just curious to see what your take is about how they can develop and go to the next level that, maybe they can go on a journey like yours or they can grow and develop and become leaders one day themselves as well. Yeah.
Well, I grew up in a system where we specialize in this one thing, right? For me, it was math and math competition. And then just because, English was another strength of mine, right? I got scholarship, right? Yeah. And then go overseas. So I think in this day and age, right, become good at many things is really critical. So if you're a software engineer, you can love coding, right? But then, how do you present your code? How do you explain your work? That requires verbal skill. How do you document it? Take screenshot, write, again, writing skill. And how do you then collaborate with other people? Not just you do this, I do this. Takes self-awareness, right?
Of course.
To then have great teamwork. So definitely for me, what most rewarding has been try to be all-rounded, where as a technical lead and engineer, right? Just get better at presentation, get better at communication, public speaking.
Yeah.
Then you realize that maybe I can contribute to open source. Maybe I can, offer sort of advisory role at other people's company. Now that I have more experience.
Yeah.
So then find the right communities. So I don't know any engineer who just say, well, I'm just going to be, really good at this one thing, or no, actually, whatever is developing,
Right.
I already know them.
Right. Right.
Yes, it's very good to be really good at one thing, but the odds are, right, unless you pursue PhD level, you really stand out in something. The odds are actually the interpersonal skill, the curiosity, staying up, right, with technology, the tools, the framework, and even finding the great companies, the great products to work for.
Yeah.
It takes luck as well.
Of course.
So we have a lot of engineers in Vietnam. How many of them are lucky enough to be in a company where they can learn from someone more senior,
Right.
To then grow really fast, and then to be lucky enough that someone recognized their work. Again, that's a pain point I try to solve, which is engineers tend to switch jobs often, products die, right? And then you just kind of lose a lot of relationship along the way. You learn from all these people, or some other time everyone was too busy building and you don't learn. So my advice will be just keep learning and look internationally for those opportunities.
Yeah.
And I think, physical health is also super important.
Yeah, of
Because
course.
as engineers, we sit in front of the computer for, 8, 12, 16 hours a day.
Yeah,
Not to
yeah.
mention those who love computer games.
Oh, right.
So exercising, working out. So for me, family and fitness, right,
Yeah.
come first. So that then when I work, I can still spend hours coding, spend hours, doing meetings, and feel like mentally, I'm okay.
I see. I was going to ask you actually, what do you do for fun? One fun fact about Harley is that he's actually the #1 ranked Ironman triathlete, I think, in Vietnam right now.
No, it's just only age group.
In his age group.
35 to
In his age
39.
group. So nonetheless, still very, very impressive given that you're managing a 100-person team remotely and you're doing all of this other stuff on the side as well. I'm just curious, how do you actually de-stress? What has exercise played in terms of the role in your life, and what really motivates you? Because most people, when they think about exercise, they want to go play some pickleball for 1 hour,
Yeah.
but yours is like, I'm gonna bike for 8 hours and I'm gonna run a marathon after that, which
Yeah.
is absolutely insane in my
Yeah.
mind, right? So can you tell me a little bit more about that, and how do you get into that, and what drives you there? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got into triathlon by accident, right?
Okay.
So my co-founder now, he gifted me a ticket because I signed you up for Ironman Vietnam Da Nang.
Wow.
It's called 70.3, right? So
So he hated you, right? He
He,
didn't like
was
you.
like, I think you can do it, right?
Wow.
And I was like,
Wow.
what do I have to do?
Okay.
Yeah, you swim 2 kilometers. And then when you add, and then you bike for 90 kilometers, and you run a half marathon.
Wow.
So and you add them up, it takes as long as you finish under 8.5 hours, right?
Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, okay, well, what do? I learned swimming, and for me was holding this paddle and then kicking, and I wasn't moving.
Wow.
And that moment, I was smiling at myself because I was looking at the bottom of the pool. I'm not moving. It means it's better that I face this weakness now. It's a shame that I don't know how to freestyle, right? I'm learning freestyle. I face it now rather than
Yeah.
waiting a few more years.
Right.
But then I got into marathon. COVID happened. A few things got canceled.
Yeah.
Then I also got into Ocean Man, which is a longer swim, because I sprained my ankle in a soccer match. So
Wow.
what that taught me along the way is one, right? There are many ways to exercise, but when you have a much harder goal, there's only one way, right? You have fewer distractions. You have to show up. You have to work out. This is called training.
Yeah.
7 hours a week. When I did a full Ironman, which is double the distance we mentioned in Vietnam. So when I did that in the Philippines, finishing at like 13 and a half hours, right? And of course you have to finish before 17 hours. But so in a way, get a decent ranking as you go. And that's because, well, can you actually already be on a momentum to work out 15 hours a week? And you learn better about pushing yourself, doing more than you think you can. Having that goal, just being disciplined, actually a lot more natural. You get scared, right? And then now you then hang out with the right people. Well,
Yeah.
you surround yourself with people who can then inspire you a bit more.
Right.
That's why I'm doing ultra marathon next. And when you do ultra, you cannot do it in the city. So I need to go to the trail and then
Wow.
buy different equipments, get dirty. I don't like that idea. But then again, all the reason to say no
Yeah.
is they're not as good as one reason to say yes, which is well, other people can do it, 70-kilometer, ultra, I can do it. So, and then hopefully in our company, we celebrate that. We try to get people to sign up. So we work remotely, but when we attend races together, there's bonding.
Wow.
Right? Just last weekend, right? My co-founder runs with someone from the mountain area in our company. He flew to Hanoi to run a full marathon there.
Wow.
It's the biggest, the Hanoi Heritage Marathon.
Yeah.
This weekend, I'm going to Dalat to run with, ultra with another engineer of ours.
Wow.
So then we get to celebrate these engineers as marathon runner.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it builds the company culture.
Yeah.
And we have to uphold that. It becomes something that if we stop doing it, then people are like, well, that's missing. So I have been injured, and then your attitude towards injury is different.
Of course.
It's more like part of the game.
Of course.
So you just recover and then set another goal.
It sounds like it not only promotes the physical fitness, but also, I'd imagine for the employees and even for you, it teaches you this mentality of setting very hard, ambitious goals and having a lot of discipline, having a lot of grit to train them and, accept it. So I think, it serves multiple purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets you into multiple commitments. I used to think that that's a distraction.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
sometimes committed to multiple things give you the energy, give you a different way to look at it.
Wow.
That's like imagine work-life integration, right? When I go on running is when I learn the most. Listen to an audiobook,
Right.
On either leadership or remote work or even sometimes a technical book.
Yeah.
But then you also, when you go to sleep, right, you actually feel like I need to sleep because I need to train. So I end up sleeping more than when I was an engineer. Because
Right.
as an engineer, then it's like I can just sleep an hour later.
Right,
I can just have a
right.
more flexible schedule.
Right.
So you could, in this case, multiple commitment forces you to think ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not as good in terms of the freedom of time, but when you're more disciplined with time, especially if you have teammates, coworkers, I'm lucky that in my role, if I can take on multiple things as long as a few things turn out to be really good. The other things I may not have time, I can be quite honest to my team and say, I'm sorry, I'm going to drop this.
Right.
And I think it's okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm such in awe of you, not only just because of the company side, but I can't ever imagine. Now my parents are getting older, they're starting to run more, but doing Ironmans and stuff, that's absolutely incredible. I just want to wrap up by kind of doing this last section, which what we're going to do is just a quick rapid fire kind of section with a few random questions basically that we have top of mind. So are you ready for that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The first question is, what is your favorite tech tool or that something that you've been using recently?
That's Obsidian. I use it for note taking.
Okay.
In the AI days, now I can just have my files as text files on my computer and my phone without worrying about the cloud. So Obsidian it is.
Very cool. Second question is like, if you were not doing what you're doing now, like what else, do you think you would be spending your time on?
Yeah, teaching, training smart people is a huge passion of mine. I may not be that patient, right, to teach a lot of people from 0 to 1, but
Yeah.
I just love learn. I feel like because I believe in learning from people as much as they learn when you share that knowledge. So university lecturer, right, working with really smart students, and also contributing to open source, so writing code that get critiqued by the world, but then it gets used by the world.
That's awesome. Next question is, what are you most grateful for in life?
Family.
Family. That's awesome.
Yeah, just hands down, right? I think just family is what I go back to, and when I respect my own family, I'm grateful for it. I also respect other people's family, and yeah.
What's the worst advice that you've ever received?
Sleep is overrated.
Ah.
I used to give that advice and I used to receive that advice.
Ah.
I used to do Uberman, sleep schedule, like a different sort of things. But in the end, don't compromise on sleep.
Awesome. And then the last question for you is, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Yeah, in my case, I also lived through it, which is surround yourself with the people who define, right, how you can become. So yeah, just for me, it's not always about sticking with just one group of people. I always have to surround myself with better people to lift me up.
Awesome, awesome. And with that, I think Harley, thank you so much for coming today. It was such an amazing conversation, learning about your personal but also professional journey. I think for those of the viewers who actually want to find more about you or about CoderPush, where can they find you online?
I'm not good at putting stuff online yet, but I am on LinkedIn, my full name, Harley Trung, and then my company is coderpush.com. So.
Well, thank you so much, Harley, for your time. That was an amazing conversation, learning both about your professional journey, but also about your personal journey and what really drives you. So really appreciate your time. And this has been an amazing episode of the CTO Show by Tech Vibe. And Harley, thank you so much again for your time, and look forward to having you again sometime.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.